Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. In a quiet town in South Carolina, people start to worry when the Carter family seems to vanish. No one has seen Jason, his wife Danielle, or their 19-year-old daughter Sarah for days. The Carters were well known, especially Jason, a calm, respected local businessman. Jason and his family lived in a peaceful suburb. At 45, he ran a successful restaurant, a favorite among the locals. He was seen as a model family man, always kind, always smiling. His restaurant not only supported his family, but also built his reputation in the town. Danielle, 38, stayed home, focusing on raising Sarah, her daughter from a previous marriage. Sarah was in college, living with her parents while figuring out her future. For years, Danielle believed she had a solid marriage. Jason seemed like the perfect husband, even though he worked late and took frequent trips he said were for business. But over time, things started to feel the relationship between Jason and Sarah seemed strange. Sarah, usually outgoing and chatty, began to change. She became distant, stopped talking about her life, and seemed to be hiding something. She stayed out late, didn't share where she'd been, and spent more time alone in her room. Jason, on the other hand, seemed to pay more attention to her, stepping in to defend her during arguments with Danielle. It made Danielle uneasy. Then Danielle found something odd while cleaning Sarah's room, notes that weren't written by her daughter. These messages were filled with unsettlingly intimate words, one of which read, "You're the one who makes me feel alive." Though disturbed, Danielle tried to dismiss it as teenage drama. But a few days later, Danielle noticed the odd glances exchanged between Jason and Sarah. Her worry deepened. Danielle couldn't sleep, her mind racing with fear. She started watching everything more closely. Sarah's secret outings, Jason's constant phone calls when Sarah wasn't home. Every little thing heightened her anxiety. She became convinced something terrible was happening under her own roof. One tense night, unable to stand it any longer, Danielle decided to follow Jason and Sarah, hoping to find answers to the darkness she feared was closing in on her family. Danielle could no longer ignore the disturbing signs. Her heart races as she hides in the shadows of the hallway, watching Jason quietly slip into Sarah's room, closing the door behind him. It's past midnight when Danielle finally gathers the courage to creep closer, pressing her ear to the door. The muffled voices inside make her stomach churn. She hears Sarah whisper, "We have to keep this from everyone. No one can ever find out about our secrets." Danielle freezes in shock. Her mind races through possibilities, but she isn't ready to face the worst. This is her family after all. Yet whatever is happening behind that closed door no longer feels innocent. Deciding not to confront them immediately, she convinces herself she needs more proof before jumping to conclusions. But that night marks a turning point. She can't sleep, haunted by what she heard. Every glance between Jason and Sarah seems more suspicious. Every moment they spend together more secretive. Now, they seem to avoid her altogether. As the days pass, Danielle's anxiety intensifies. She starts to suspect something darker than just hidden secrets. Unable to ignore the tension any longer, she decides to confront Jason. But his reaction leaves her stunned. Jason stays eerily calm, even amused. He dismisses her suspicions with cold, cutting remarks. "You're probably just exhausted," he tells her, "or going through a midlife crisis." His voice drips with condescension, twisting the situation so that Danielle starts questioning herself. "You're just jealous of Sarah growing up becoming independent," he adds, making her feel irrational and petty. His words mess with her mind. He manipulates her so smoothly that Danielle starts doubting everything. Each time she tries to bring up her concerns, Jason skillfully turns it around, making her feel as if she's the problem. "Do you really think I'd risk our family?" he asks, laughing softly, his demeanor calm and unbothered, as though he has nothing to hide. This game begins to erode her sanity. Trapped in her own spiraling doubts, Danielle finds herself isolated, unable to trust her own instincts. After a week of sleepless nights, she realizes that Jason's calm words don't match the storm inside her. She needs to act. One evening, while Jason is out, Danielle sits at his computer, determined to uncover the truth. After a few failed guesses, she manages to crack his password, only to find a hidden folder protected by another code. Her hands shake as she tries different combinations until she breaks in. What she finds inside destroys her. A collection of photos and videos appears on the screen, images too horrifying to comprehend, capturing moments between Jason and Sarah that confirm her worst fears. The images on the screen reveal more than Danielle could ever imagine. These aren't just signs of an affair, they're evidence of Jason's complete manipulation and control over Syra. The videos show Jason using his position as a stepfather to dominate her, pulling her into a toxic, abusive relationship. Danielle is devastated, paralyzed by the horror that her family has unraveled in such a monstrous way. Anger and fear flood her. The man she once loved, trusted, and relied on is turned into a predator, and her daughter is caught in his web. Danielle knows she must act fast. Sitting idly by isn't an option. She's convinced she has to save Syra from Jason's clutches. Fueled by fear and determination, she begins to form an escape plan, thinking of how they could vanish from Jason's reach. She envisions fleeing into the night, leaving no trace, finding safety in a new town and building a life away from the nightmare that her home has become. Danielle prepares everything. She packs small bags, gathers important documents, and researches places where Jason wouldn't be able to find them. In her heart, she believes Syra is a victim, and it's her job to pull her daughter out of this dangerous situation. But when she shares her plan with Syra, everything takes an unexpected turn. Instead of relief, Syra's response is cold and dismissive. She refuses to leave and even mocks Danielle for her naivety. Shocked, Danielle is left speechless. Why doesn't her daughter want to escape from Jason? As the truth starts to unravel, Danielle begins to realize that Syra is not innocent as she thought. Desperate to understand, Danielle confronts Syra alone, hoping for some honesty. But what she hears shatters everything. Syra confesses that she wasn't manipulated by Jason. She entered the relationship willingly. She used him as a pawn in her own twisted plan to destroy Danielle's marriage. For years, Syra had harbored resentment toward her mother for what she saw as years of control and overprotection. Now, she had taken matters into her own hands, turning the tables on both Jason and Danielle. "You think he was playing with me?" Syra says, her voice cold and detached. "No, Mom, I'm the one playing with them." Her eyes are icy, her expression devoid of emotion. Danielle is horrified. Syra's plan wasn't just to break free from her mother's control. It was to destroy her family entirely. She had manipulated Jason, driving a wedge between him and Danielle, all to seize control for herself. Danielle is left devastated. The daughter she thought she was saving isn't a victim at all. Syra had been the one pulling the strings all along, playing a dark game that neither Jason nor Danielle saw coming. For Danielle, this truth is the final blow. Her family, her marriage, and even her relationship with her daughter have been built on lies and manipulation. Danielle's world crumbles as the horrifying truth sinks in. Syra wasn't just a victim. She was the mastermind manipulating everything from the start. Every action, every glance was calculated. The realization hits Danielle like a wave, pulling her into despair. She understands now, neither Jason nor Syra will let her live unless she acts swiftly. Trapped in a web of their deceit, Danielle faces the grim reality. She's part of a deadly game, and her family has become her enemy. Jason and Syra, now working together, decide to eliminate her, making it look like a tragic accident. In her desperation, Danielle tries to flee the city alone, but it's too late. Before she knows it, she is caught in their sinister plot. They stage a car accident, carefully orchestrating every detail to make it appear like a simple mishap. But Danielle soon realizes that this is no mere attempt to get her out of their lives. It's a calculated plan to end it. In one last terrifying act, they lure her into a meeting, promising peace and resolution. Panic-stricken, yet holding on to a faint hope of escape, Danielle agrees to the meeting. However, things spiral out of control from the moment she arrives. Syra takes pleasure in taunting her, savoring Danielle's fear, while Jason, completely under Syra's control, readies himself to deliver the final blow. The setting for their deadly scheme is a deserted road deep in the woods, far from town. The isolation makes it the perfect place to stage their final act. No witnesses, no interruptions, just darkness and silence. If things go as planned, they'll walk away, leaving no trace behind. Jason, blinded by Syra's manipulation, believes everything will unfold smoothly. But as they approach a sharp bend in the road, Danielle's mind, though clouded with fear, begins to clear. She realizes that this was never Jason's plan. From the very beginning, Syra had been pulling the strings, manipulating both her mother and Jason with terrifying precision. The signs Danielle once ignored flashed before her. Syra's cold stares, the smirks hidden behind fake innocence, the secret plots unfolding behind closed doors. It all falls into place. And now, as the car slows and pulls to the side of the road, Sierra is ready to act. The door opens and Jason steps out, preparing to drag Danielle from the car, intending to finish what they started. But something in Danielle shifts. In that moment, she decides she won't go down without a fight. Summoning every ounce of strength, she resists. She knows this may be her last chance to survive. And with adrenaline pumping through her veins, she fights back, determined to escape her own family's deadly trap. As Danielle faces the horrific aftermath of the confrontation, the weight of betrayal crushes her. The physical struggle with Jason had brought years of pain to a violent climax. Though he had the strength, Jason's mental exhaustion allowed Danielle to act in desperation. When he lunged at her, she reacted instinctively, pushing him with all her might. Jason's fall was quick. His head struck a rock at the roadside, and he died instantly. For a moment, Danielle is frozen, staring at the lifeless body of the man she once loved, unable to comprehend the gravity of what had just occurred. She turns to Sierra, hoping to find some humanity in her daughter, hoping that together they can finally escape the dark grip of Jason's manipulation. But what she sees is far worse than anything she imagined. Sierra's face shows no fear, no regret. Without hesitation, Sierra steps forward. Already weaving the narrative to her advantage, she knows exactly how to frame the situation using Danielle's shock against her. Sierra screams toward the empty forest, calling out to an imaginary witness, pretending to be the victim of a violent and unstable mother. In an instant, she stages the scene, placing the blame squarely on Danielle. Sierra even tosses the object she claims Danielle used to strike Jason, fabricating evidence with chilling precision. Before Danielle can comprehend the deception, Sierra vanishes into the night, heading toward the highway. She has her plan set. Sierra will tell the police that her mother discovered the affair, went into a jealous rage, and killed Jason, then tried to kill her as well. As the police arrive, they find Danielle in shock, standing alone beside Jason's body. The scene Sierra constructed looks plausible, too plausible. The officers quickly arrest Danielle, piecing together the false version of events that Sierra has laid out for them. Sierra, playing the part perfectly, paints herself as the innocent victim of her mother's jealousy and anger. Her tears, the disarray of her hair, even her self-inflicted injuries, make her story convincing. She tells the police that she tried to protect her father, only for Danielle to lash out in a murderous rage. Danielle, overwhelmed by the tragedy, stands helpless as her world crumbles. Her husband is dead. Her daughter has betrayed her. And now, Sierra holds all the power, manipulating the situation with terrifying precision. By morning, Danielle is the prime suspect, charged with the murder of her husband and the attempted murder of her daughter. Sierra's performance has fooled everyone, and Danielle is left trapped in a nightmare orchestrated by the very person she once believed she could save. In the early days of the investigation, the case seems clear-cut to everyone. The local media sensationalizes the story. A jealous wife driven to murder after discovering her husband's affair with her daughter. Sierra's version of events. The narrative of an unhinged mother initially fits neatly into the evidence. Danielle's fingerprints are on the weapon, and signs of a struggle support Sierra's claims of self-defense. Everything points to Danielle as the guilty party. Detectives Lawrence and Reed, seasoned investigators, take on the case. At first, they don't question Sierra's account, but as they continue their work, something doesn't sit right. The simplicity of the case seems unsettling. Sierra's emotional displays feel rehearsed, and the detectives are unsettled by how calmly she handles everything, even as her father lies dead and her mother faces criminal charges. Determined to follow their instincts, Lawrence and Reed dig deeper. Sierra's behavior in the days following the tragedy doesn't match that of a grieving daughter. Her responses during questioning seem calculated, almost too perfect, leading them to suspect that there's more beneath the surface. When they search her room, they stumble upon something that shifts the course of the investigation entirely. An old diary hidden among her belongings. The diary entries reveal a shocking and methodical plan. Over several years, Sierra had detailed her thoughts and manipulations, chronicling how she slowly gained control over Jason. The diary exposes her gradual efforts to manipulate her stepfather, orchestrating his dependency on her, all while devising a scheme to eliminate Danielle from the picture. The detectives realized that the relationship between Sierra and Jason wasn't merely an affair. It was a carefully plotted manipulation, with Sierra as the mastermind. As the detectives combed through the diary, it becomes clear that Sierra had been planning Danielle's downfall for a long time. She had orchestrated everything, from the affair to the murder, believing she could blame her mother and escape unscathed. She wrote about wanting to control not just Jason, but the family's assets and his business. Her ultimate goal was to become the sole authority in the household. The diary radically changes the trajectory of the investigation. Lawrence and Reed now see Danielle not as the perpetrator, but as the victim of an elaborate psychological game. They begin to view the crime in a new light, realizing that Sierra had carefully crafted her role as the innocent daughter, using Danielle as a scapegoat for the perfect crime. Interviews with Sierra's friends and acquaintances further unearth troubling details. Several of her friends recount incidents where Sierra displayed manipulative tendencies, controlling people around her to get what she wanted. They describe how she could easily influence others, subtly bending them to her will, and how she thrived on manipulating situations to her advantage. As the investigation unfolds, Sierra's carefully constructed plan starts to unravel. Detectives find text messages between Jason and Sierra that further prove her dominance over him. These messages, filled with suggestive language and coded discussions about Danielle, confirm that Sierra had planned to eliminate her mother, seeing her as an obstacle to gaining full control. As the walls close in, Sierra begins to lose her grip. Her once flawless lies begin to crack, and inconsistencies surface, with the damning evidence mounting against her. The detectives prepare to expose the full extent of Sierra's scheme, setting the stage for a dramatic unraveling of her twisted manipulation. The day the detectives returned to Danielle with the new findings, it was like a lifeline for her. After weeks of being wrongfully accused of her husband Jason's murder, she finally felt hope. Though the revelation of her daughter Sierra's betrayal left her shattered, Danielle could now at least take solace in knowing the truth was coming to light. The case underwent a dramatic shift. Sierra, once seen as the innocent daughter, became the prime suspect. Danielle, on the other hand, was no longer the accused murderer, but a victim of a twisted conspiracy orchestrated by her daughter. The trial, which began on December 3rd, 2022, captivated the nation. Held at the district court, it drew significant media attention, with public opinion hanging on every detail of the scandalous case. Leading the prosecution was James Hammond, a veteran attorney with a reputation for uncovering the darkest of schemes. To prove beyond doubt that Sierra had manipulated both her stepfather Jason and her mother Danielle in a cold, calculated plan to murder Jason and frame her mother. The prosecution presented damning evidence, including Sierra's diary entries that meticulously outlined her plan. Text messages between her and Jason painted a chilling picture of how she had manipulated the situation, playing both sides to her advantage. These revelations painted Sierra not as a confused and frightened daughter, but as the mastermind of the entire tragedy. On the first day of the trial, Sierra continued to present herself as a victim. She claimed she had been terrified of her mother and was merely defending herself. Her defense attorney attempted to portray Sierra as a vulnerable young woman caught in the crossfire of her parents' tumultuous relationship. According to her defense, Sierra was confused and acted out of fear rather than malice. Sierra also made emotional claims about Danielle being a controlling and cruel figure in the household, trying to evoke sympathy from the jury. However, the diaries proved to be the undoing of Sierra's defense. They revealed her long-term, premeditated plan to remove Danielle from her life entirely so that she could have complete control over Jason and the family's assets. Witnesses, including several of Sierra's friends, gave testimony that highlighted her manipulative tendencies. They spoke of how Sierra could make others do her bidding, including Jason, who had become a pawn in her deadly game. The emotional climax of the trial came when Danielle took the stand. Her testimony was raw with pain as she recounted the betrayal by her husband and daughter. She described the emotional and psychological toll of discovering Sierra's manipulations, not only of Jason but of her too. Danielle's heartfelt testimony was key in convincing the jury that she had been the true victim in this case, and her words struck a chord with the courtroom. As the trial progressed, Sierra's defense weakened. Her attorney tried to argue that she was merely a confused girl caught in a family conflict, but the prosecution continued to hammer home the idea that Sierra had deliberately orchestrated the entire tragedy with full awareness of its consequences. On January 11, 2023, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict. Syra Carter was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and for attempting to frame her mother for the crime. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years. As Syra was led away in handcuffs, Danielle stood in the courtroom, a mixture of relief and sorrow. She had survived the nightmare, but the price had been the loss of her family and the trust that had once held it together. The verdict provided some closure, but the emotional scars left by her daughter's betrayal would last a lifetime. The small town in South Carolina is in shock. The entire Carter family has vanished without a trace. Neighbors are deeply worried because Jason Carter, the well-regarded local businessman, his wife Danielle, and their 19-year-old daughter, Sarah, haven't been seen for days. In this quiet suburb, Jason Carter, a 45-year-old charismatic businessman, runs a popular restaurant. Known for his charm and dedication to his family, he appears to be the perfect husband and father. His business success has earned him respect, and his wife, Danielle, a 38-year-old housewife, is dedicated to raising her daughter, Sarah, from a previous marriage. Syra, a 19-year-old college student, lives with her parents and is on the brink of adulthood. Danielle is exonerated but remains emotionally shattered. After the trial, Danielle moves to a coastal town in California to escape her painful past. Living in isolation, she battles with sorrow and guilt, questioning her decisions. She begins therapy in March 2023, seeking to heal from the trauma and rebuild her life, though trust remains a struggle. Despite the ongoing internal battles, she holds on to hope for peace and recovery. In the fall of 2023, just as Danielle thought her life was finally settling down, she received a mysterious letter. It arrived in November with no return address and only a few unsettling lines. You thought you knew the whole truth about Jason and Syra. That was only the beginning. What you discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. Someone else was pulling the strings, and they didn't want you to know more. Be careful. The story isn't over. The letter shook Danielle to her core. Her heart raced as she read and reread the cryptic message. She had been trying to close this painful chapter of her life, but now doubt and fear crept in. Could there have been more to the story? Had someone else been behind the tragedy that destroyed her family? Danielle's mind raced with questions. Did Sarah have accomplices, or was there another hidden manipulator pulling the strings from the shadows? The letter left her with more questions than answers. Faced with the choice to either ignore the letter and attempt to move on or to delve deeper into the mystery, Danielle felt a familiar sense of dread. Her instincts told her the past wasn't done with her yet. The unresolved questions and dark undertones made her wonder if she was on the verge of uncovering more shocking truths that could once again turn her world upside down. To leave behind the painful past or to confront it head-on in a new investigation that could reveal even more unsettling secrets. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more gripping stories to come. See you in our next videos.